Greetings, happy warriors, and thank you for being tuned in to the Rabbi Daniel Lapin Show, where I, your rabbi, reveal how the world really works. And as always, my job is to reveal how the world really works, and that means that we always have to be cognizant of the 5 F's. We've got to be cognizant of our family life, our financial life, our social life, that's family, finance, friends, and then there is fitness, our relationship with our own bodies, and then there's faith, which is our relationship with the spiritual. And those 5 areas need to be maintained, and those 5 areas need to be allowed to interact positively with one another. And when you've got all that down, you've got how the world really works. Now, let me ask you a question. How do you define business? You know, when somebody says, well, I'm a business professional, I'm a businesswoman, I'm a businessman, I'm in business. What does that mean, actually? What does being in business really mean? Got it? Well, here is my answer. Being in business is serving another human being in exchange for money. That's what being in business is. Now, you can serve in some very specialized ways. For instance, if you are a plumber, well then you have a very specific area in which you serve other people. If you have any other form of qualification or credential, you are a bookkeeper. Okay, well then you serve people in that area. You are a drywall installer. Okay, so you serve general contractors and you serve them in a very specific area. But what about people who don't have any specific area? And the answer is that there are ways for you also to get into business and to be in business, finding ways to serve other people. I'll give you an example of that. There are people who recognized that they could collaborate with somebody else and make 1 and 1 not equal 2, but equal 37. And there are numerous examples of this. There was somebody who was a very good public speaker, and he had a message, but he wasn't very good at getting engagements, and he worked with speaking agencies, but eventually a fellow he didn't know contacted him and said, look, I've been listening to you, I see what you do, and I think that working together I could really bring you benefit. And what's more, he said, you don't have to pay me until we start making money. So it's a no-lose. Well, it turned out this guy was an excellent marketer, and the two of them built a very successful business. If I told you names, you'd recognize them. A very good chance you'd recognize them. There are situations where, I'm just talking about things that I know about, people who have been in my orbit that I've come to know of. There was somebody else who was a very good engineer. He had a relatively small machine shop where he would make parts on order. And again, somebody who he'd never met before contacted him via a mutual friend and said, again, I'm a big enthusiast, I love what you do, but I could really get you a lot of business. And again, he made him the same kind of offer. And it turned out that this guy had connections at Boeing in Seattle. And as you know, Boeing doesn't actually make a whole lot of the components in their airplanes. they contract them out to other companies, and then they're all brought together, and Boeing assembles them and takes responsibility for the final product. But in this case, this guy was able to get my friend subcontracting jobs. Where they say, we need you to make us a piece of aluminum that has the following exact dimensions, and made so on and so forth. And and the deal is, you'll supply us with 200 of these. And this guy went out and got orders like that, to the point where my friend, the person with the machine shop, had to hire additional machinists, and he had to expand his premises. And again, the two of them built a big business. To this day, they're still in a very beneficial partnership, and of course by now they're very good friends as well. Their families are friends. It's been many, many years already. But that's what I'm talking about, is seeing that, just keeping your eyes open. And there have been young people, men and women, in their late teens and early 20s, who have done this, and done it rather than going to any college or any educational institution, and they have done it very successfully. And so I've always found this to be a wonderful example of how moving into business is something that anybody can do. And it's really one of the wonderful things about business, in the sense that it doesn't need anybody else's permission. If you realize, you see an opportunity, you're seeing somebody who you could collaborate with, you could connect with that person, and between the two of you, you could do a whole lot more than either of you could do alone. Whatever it is. It might be the other way around. Maybe you are the guy who's good at, just to give you an example, handyman repairs, the sort of thing that, if you find a neighborhood occupied by middle-aged and older people, in most cases, people who are empty nesters, and you are a really good handyman. You say, there's got to be business here, because everybody who lives in this neighborhood is going to have, a picture that needs hanging, a closet door that needs to be fixed, a washing machine that needs to be connected up, all the sort of millions of things that a great handyman can do. And you just might, but I like doing the work. I don't know how to I can't go door to door and say, hi, do you have any handyman work? And then, sometime you meet somebody. Maybe it's somebody who lives in that area and might be looking for themselves to be generating a little extra income. But whatever it is, you go to that person and say, I got a deal. I want to make a suggestion to you. You're a good talker. You're a good connector. I'm not. I'm good at fixing things. And we should work together. There are so many different ways that, if you are open to the concept of what business is, that you can do really, really well. And I want to give you 3 specific things that are great about business. One is that anybody can succeed. Anybody can find a way to collaborate with somebody else. And that is a crucial part of starting off in business. What you don't want to do is say, I'm going to start a business in my garage, and proceed down that path without any person with whom you are going to set up a collaboration. The key to it is the other way around. This is really an important thing, because there's a very, very high rate of startup businesses that fail, of course. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to oversimplify it in any way at all, but one of them is a person trying to do it on his own, instead of realizing that a collaboration stands a much higher chance of succeeding. And sure enough, where businesses start off as partnerships, there's a substantially higher likelihood of success than when businesses start off as an individual single person doing it by himself. So anybody can succeed, and the second thing that's great about business is that it is so related to other areas of your life. Success in business is something that leads to success in other areas in life as well. What do I mean here? Well, what I mean is that the principles needed in business, let me give you an example. Part of running a successful business is learning to do things that need to be done even if you don't feel like doing them. Well, think how valuable that is in a marriage, right? You often have to do things that need to be done even if you don't particularly necessarily feel like doing them at that moment. Your spouse is counting on it. These are there are many examples of things like that. The ability in business to defer gratification, the ability in business to deliver what you say you're going to deliver at the time you say you're going to deliver it. And again, how wonderful to be able to count on a spouse. When a spouse says, I'll do it by this afternoon. One of the very frustrating things, particularly for women, is living with a man who says, yes, okay, but then nothing ever happens. And it has to become almost a crisis communication. And again, for improvement of marriage as well as improvement in business, when men realize that when their wife brings up something, it may sound like she's bringing it up in passing, but it needs to be addressed. You either must tell her you're going to ignore her, or you have to tell her you're going to deal with it, or you're going to tell her that it'll be dealt with in a different sort of a way. But again, direct and effective communication, you learn it in business, it's great for other parts of life as well. And then the third one is business never leaves you at a dead end. If you are a worker in some sort of company where you don't feel invested as a business participant, the business closes, you're left out on the street. You may have another avenue, but when you're in business, you're always meeting people and you're always connecting with people. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again, where somebody has been in business for 3 or 4 years and things have been going okay, and then things stop going okay and he wants to pivot into something else because things always change. I did a Lapin lens for We Happy Warriors members a couple of days ago, where I spoke about Kodak. Kodak in the 70s actually invented the digital camera, decided to not touch it. They abandoned it, and other people picked up the digital camera, Sony and Canon, and away they ran, leaving Kodak on the road to bankruptcy. There's always the need to be open to change, the need to be aware of things on the horizon, again, for business and for life. Really, really important. But you're meeting so many people. I can't think of how many people this has happened to, and anybody in business will resonate with this, where somebody says, well, that's really interesting. By the way, if you ever embark on something else, be back in touch with me. I'd be interested in working with you or talking with you. And so when one avenue closes in business, if you've been effective in business, you right away have a half a dozen names in your contact list of people who said, be in touch with me. And they won't all work out, but somebody will. And so business leaves you without a dead end of any kind, which is quite wonderful. And I want to also, before I go to the main body of today's show, I want to tell you about the We Happy Warriors membership, in case you have not yet joined our community of We Happy Warriors. Well, one of the benefits, there are many benefits, but one of them is that every week I do a special bonus podcast on a topic that I'm not necessarily going to speak about in public, but I do speak about to the Happy Warrior community. And so, for instance, this week, the bonus for members is going to be what women who want to get married should never talk about. That's right. Because you may be a woman who wants to get married, but more likely you may know somebody who does, and you may be in a position to be helpful to somebody in that category, or you might be a man in that process, and you might be realizing something really important. Again, what I'm going to discuss specifically for Happy Warriors, the bonus podcast, what women should never talk about, what women who want to be married should never talk about. And I'll be explaining all of that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to an interview I conducted with Jim Cockrum, who is somebody who has escorted thousands, up to I think maybe 10,000 people into the wonderful world of business. And he and I share many different interests, but this a deep reverence for the field of business is something we do share. So I want us to talk with Jim Cockrum. We're going to do that, and then when we come back, I will wrap up by telling you about three entities, okay, that show the difference between moving from good to great. And yes, I know it's a Jim Collins book, but to really excel at what you do, what's the point of it? How do you do it? I'm going to explain that just as soon as we come back. So let's go straight to Jim Cockrum, who is going to be a guest on today's interview. Well, Happy Warriors, today is a very enjoyable opportunity for me. My dear friend Jim Cockrum is our guest, and it's been a number of years we've been together, Jim, and now we're
Yes,
doing
sir.
something together in a very constructive and exciting kind of a way. But first of all, for the one or two people who've recently immigrated from out of Mongolia, just introduce yourself and let people know a little bit about your extraordinary background in online marketing.
Well, I've heard you interviewed a good number of times, and I adopted something to my own pattern here that I learned from you. I'm not going to talk a lot about myself. I want to provide maximum value to the listeners today. And I heard you do that one time, and I thought that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Everyone loves to talk about themselves, but I want to provide maximum value for your listeners today. So, in the briefest possible fashion, follower of God, love my wife for 30 years, 5 kids, beautiful grandson playing in the other room behind me right now. We're babysitting.
Great.
You couldn't be more blessed using the internet creatively to build multiple income streams and helping other people do the same thing. That's what I do. That's who I am. I consider this my mission, my calling. And we've had a reasonable degree of success. And I count it among one of the greatest honors of my career to have developed a friendship with you and Susan, to have had you at our event multiple times.
Yes.
You've become a dear, respected, and honored friend in our community. And you've spoken a lot of wisdom, very specific wisdom into my business over the years that has truly transformed the way we do things. And so, that's enough of an introduction for me to feel like I'm serving the community of your listeners. And I am a fan. I am a consumer. I'm not kidding when I say I've listened to every podcast you've put out, and I've read most of your material as well, reference it frequently. So I'm a little bit, I don't know, nervous being
No,
on your
you're not.
show. It's surreal for me because, and I'm a little disappointed because this is an episode I don't get to hear because I've already done it.
Yeah, right. Um, so he, here's how we come to be together right now on this one. Um, so over the years, I have been doing a certain amount of life coaching. I say a certain amount because, for the most part, I try to serve no more than three clients at a time, just because it's enormously time consuming, and it is also intellectually and emotionally consuming because one invariably gets intricately enmeshed in the challenges that one's clients face, and that means that even when one is doing other things, these questions are churning through one's mind. And so I think it was a wise decision I made a while back to keep it down to 3 clients at a time, and with very few exceptions, that's what I've done. And the core to it has been essentially what later became the 5F principles laid out in our book, The Holistic You, integrating. Yeah,
I've got my
exactly.
copy right here for those watching. For those listening, you
Integrating
don't.
your family,
It's
finance,
never far away.
friendships, faith, and fitness, the five
Hmm.
F's. And it's turned out to be extremely effective just because it is so real that the different crucial zones in one's life do interact with one another. And it's uh, I've spoken to people, and I'm sure you have as well. And even though they're talking to me about their marriage, I can tell them what's going on in their business, because when one is accustomed to understanding the interconnection, it becomes very evident indeed. And
Absolutely.
uh, so then what happened, if I remember correctly, is I think you approached me and we were talking about this, or I may have approached you for some advice. I don't remember which way it was, but we ended up talking about this, and I realized that using some of your strategies and letting you coach me on how some of this can be more effectively transmitted, there was a lot of good that could come out of it for a lot of people. And so that's how we started talking. And the result is that we have put together, and it's on the We Happy Warriors website. There's a page, wehappywarriors.com/5F coaching, where, and here, Jim, let me toss it to you to explain why anybody might want to go to that website.
Yeah, well, we started the conversation. I believe I may have initiated it. I don't remember. It's been quite a while back. We've had several very productive calls with Susan as well, and just brainstorming. And here's, as a consumer and a fan of the content you've created, and as someone who has always said, okay, I want more. What else is there? And I see and I know you've attended our live events, and this is me answering your question, right? You've attended our live events, and we've had conversations with people kind of swirling around in this exciting energy of a live event, and said, what is missing in the Lapin arena that I could help bring to the table? And based on some of the models that we've used in our community, for example, I've got 60 coaches on my team, right? And these are people that I pour into their lives. I work directly with them. I don't work so much with the end students as much anymore. The ascension of leadership has taken me to where I'm dealing with the team leaders, right? Your organization doesn't have a lot of that. From my perception, we had some conversations like, could we build some of that into what you have? Because there's some incredible wisdom that can be dispersed down into qualified leaders and educators or coaches who say, you know what, I understand the Lapin's 5F: faith, family, friendship, fitness, finance. I think I could coach that. I think I could become qualified to help others without Rabbi Lapin and Susan having to be in the room. And we look at other prominent leaders. They've built these organizations where people are trained under their philosophies. John Maxwell comes to mind. Those sorts of things. Like, there's no reason why Rabbi Daniel Lapin shouldn't have something like that. So we're in the process of launching that, and that's what the website you alluded to, wehappywarriors.com/5F coaching. It's the number 5, the letter F, coaching. And we're going to do a series of free webinars where you and I are going to talk with Susan as well, maybe some surprise guests, what it means to integrate these qualities into your life, one, but also what does it mean to maybe step into a role where you can become a coach who's certified in the 5F philosophy. And as mentioned and spelled out so well in the Holistic You, I'm holding up my copy of the book again. I always listen to your show. I admittedly don't ever watch the YouTube videos. I just listen on while running or whatever. But it's a must read book. I've got my signed copy here. That will really help unpack the foundational concepts of what we're trying to do here. But if you're ready to say, all right, I wouldn't mind teaching others, I might be qualified to teach others. I've always wanted to have a coaching business. I wouldn't mind doing it under the brand of what the Lapins have built. That's what I'm doing my best to help you guys build out, Rabbi Lapin, and along with the help of Susan. And I'm excited for it. That it's a project we've worked on quite a bit. And it starts off, like I said, with just some free webinars, and kind of help filter through, who is this for, and just creating some good content together. I'm excited to create content with you. That's a real pleasure for me. If that's all it ends up being, hey, that's great.
What I like about it is that whilst I'm sure that it can be satisfying to coach people in tennis or in competitive driving, or some, basketball or anything else. I'm sure it can be satisfying to help people, or in those areas. What's so rewarding to me personally about working with people to improve their finances is because you can be, and I'm not pointing a finger at anyone in particular, but you can be a top-seeded tennis pro and be a really horrible human being.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely horrible person.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very much rarer in the world of business. Now, people say, oh, what are you talking about? They're horrible. Well, wait a second. Here's how that works. At the margins of the bell curve, among the super successful, and most conspicuously among those whose success was sudden and quick, not the Warren Buffetts of the world, who's been building Berkshire Hathaway for 50 plus years. But yes, so at that end, there are going to be some immature, nasty, horrible people. And then at the other end of the extremely unsuccessful end, and yes, I do see this, there are people who have come to me, and I've done what I think any professional does. I've done an evaluation, and I've said, look, I don't think I can help you. I'm not the right person. And in general, this would be largely because they have so much restorative work to do. There is so much wrong that it's more than I can deliver. And so down at that end, yeah, there are people who are struggling, who see themselves as being in business. They're not really, but they see themselves, and they get embittered and unpleasant. But if you leave aside those two ends, the upper end and the lowest end, and if you look at the vast body of the bell curve where most of us reside, put it in its simplest terms, the average store owner says, have a good day when a customer walks out the store. Okay, that sums it up. And so the interface between doing well in business and doing well in other parts of your life is so real and so powerful and so compelling that it becomes life transformative. Let me throw out one more example that I'd love to hear you comment on, and that is being a good business professional makes you more likely to be a good spouse as well. Really? What have those two things got to do with one another? Well, I'll tell you. very often in business, one of the things you have to do is something that you don't feel like doing. You're supposed to do it. It needs to be done. You are the one who has to do it, and it has to be done now. And you don't want to be the one to do it. You don't want to do it at all. You certainly don't want to do it now, but you go ahead and make yourself do it anyways. And as you progress in your business career, you become better and better at that, to the point where it happens more and more infrequently that you run up against something. Oh, I don't want to do this. Well, what in a marriage could be more common than situations where you think to yourself, um, I don't want to do this. My wife says, do you want to have supper at home tonight, or should we go out for supper? And I want to say, I really don't care. Whatever you decide is fine. And then in the nick of time, I realize that she doesn't want a decision. She wants a communication. And the business training kicks in. And I say, let's discuss it. Let's talk about and that's a whole different game. The question of optimism, Jim, and optimism is crucial in business, and we speak about ways we teach people how to build optimism. It is very, very difficult to make the next phone call or knock on the next door if you can't summon up reserves of optimism.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine, you and I are blessed, but there are people who are married to pessimists. It's draining.
Absolutely.
Absolutely draining. And so, just two examples of where that if you are becoming better at business, you're also developing the attributes to make yourself better at marriage. And obviously, vice versa, backwards too.
The five F's all connect. And just to borrow a very real illustration from the way we set up our business, I heard you say many years ago a different version of the same thing you're saying now, which is, if the only thing I know about you, I don't know if you went to college or not. I don't know what your economic background is. Certainly don't know your, maybe even not so much about your worldview. I don't know a lot about you, but I know that you've built a profitable business that is sustained with happy customers over a significant period of time. That's all I know.
Yeah.
That's one of the safest bets you can make. And I even recall some studies that you did looking at comparing small business owners to other professional demographics, doctors, even clergy, college professors.
Yes.
Who among us is the least likely to be a problem, commit a felony, create some? It's the business owners.
Yes.
If that's all I know about you, Rabbi Lapin, that's it. I've built my whole organization around this. I don't have to sit down with lengthy interviews. Some of the people that I've built an incredible organization with, they represent my name in a significant way in front of many people, and they'll coach and they'll do strategy sessions. The only thing I know about that person is they've got a teacher's heart. I do look for that. But you've got to have that to lead in business. And they've built a successful business that's sustained over a significant period of time. That's all I need to know. If I know about them, a 5-minute conversation and I turn them loose. Like, yes, you can represent us all day, every day. Welcome to the team.
Yes.
Right. That's just one illustration of what you're talking about. And I know that person is also, it's a rare exception that they aren't also, because of the self-sacrifice that's required, because of the patience, the delayed gratification. With our culture doesn't teach that anywhere. As a business owner, you got to have that. I mean, what is investing if not delaying gratification, right? Business owners invest constantly, their time, their effort, their energy, their money. Those things apply to building a beautiful marriage. Of course they do. So these 5 F's start to connect in these unexpected ways that creates this amazing pattern that you can build a very robust organization on. And what you're really doing is building a beautiful life. That's the holistic is the word you use in the title of your book, right? There's nothing more holistic than applying and interlinking these concepts. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But I mean, I've put a lot of faith in and applied in real world scenarios these things that I've learned. You've made the Bible very practical for me, is what you've done. You're an Orthodox Jewish rabbi. I'm an evangelical Christian, but you've made the Bible come to life in ways that no pastor I've ever sat under has done. Some of these Old Testament principles. This, you call it the world's longest longitudinal study of human behavior, right? And applying principles to a people group. Like there's gold there, guys. So I shout it from the mountaintops in our group all the time. And I even drive my family a little crazy sometimes with some of these principles, but it's brought the word of God to life for me.
Well, it's very, very obvious on a geopolitical level, in the sense that how many Australians jump into tiny little boats and try and row across the straits to get to Indonesia? You know,
Right.
how many people living in England try and cross the English Channel to move to France? Or how many people in living in on the French Riviera get in little boats to try and reach the coasts of North Africa? And the answer that separates what we call the West from the rest is the biblical foundation of these societies. And it's not hard to understand and to analyze just how it is that the underlying biblical principles are responsible for these societies becoming engines of prosperity, bastions of freedom. It's not hard to see.
You're
Uh,
hitting on a concept that got me hooked with your content initially. I heard Dave Ramsey mention you in passing, and I thought, oh,
yeah,
what a fascinating concept. And I picked up one of your books, Thou Shalt Prosper, and you
yeah,
open that book by basically saying, this is me paraphrasing, but you have to answer what it is that has set apart this tiny little fraction of our population. The Jews represent less than 1% in pretty much every culture they're in, unless you're going to Israel, right? There's this tiny little people group that tends to far excel um, they make up 1% of the population. They're 15% of the millionaires. They're 1% of the population. They're 25% of the comedians. They're 1% of the population. They're 18% of this. Like how does this people group do it?
yeah.
What is going on? And you eliminate all the racist, ridiculous explanations, and there's only one conclusion left. There's only one possible answer. The people of the book, we're onto something, right? And you can adapt these principles. I say all the time, regardless of worldview, you can adapt these principles into your life and benefit from them.
And you see these biblical principles coming through Christianity as well, because it is, whether it's Australia or England or France or any of the other European countries, it is essentially the lingering vestiges of Christianity that still give them what propels them forward economically. And people very often tend to dismiss that idea. Come on, how primitive, ancient document, with obsolete stories about a man and putting animals on a boat. How on earth, how does this impact the economic viability of a society? And it's not that hard to go through the foundational ideas that did take root in Christian countries, that have their origins in the Hebrew text, obviously, but nonetheless, which really uh, played a huge role. And I mean, just at its absolute simplest, at its foundational. I can't go any more basic than this. There's so much more to talk about when we get into the deeper and more complicated areas. But just the idea that in the beginning God created heaven and earth. That's not just narrative. That's the equivalent of me not sure where I lost my phone, and I ask somebody to help me look for it, and they say, "Well, where on the planet could it be?" And I say, "Well, the good news is it's in the city somewhere. Can you do any better than that?" I said, "Well, actually, yeah, I can tell you it's in this house." And finally, yeah, and I can tell you it's either this room or that room. I've totally changed the probability of a successful outcome because there is no reason for anybody to embark optimistically on a search for my missing phone if the field of search is limitless. And similarly, I would say that once I know that God created heaven and earth, well, then I expect there to be a pattern, a unifying structure in it all. And this is something even Albert Einstein, towards the end of his life, understood. He spoke about searching for the unified field theory because he was puzzled as to why it is that different forces, like magnetic and electrostatic and others, seem to behave in exactly the same way, although they're not in any way related. One embarks on a challenge in a different way, if one has an idea of where one should be searching.
Yeah, let me take a stab at putting that in my own words as a consumer of your content. Every bit, and this is the way I would paraphrase what you just said, and I've applied it in my own life. The God who created physics and the laws of gravity and the sunrise and the sunset and these precise instruments that the governors of our daily life, the same God that created those mathematical laws has created spiritual laws as well. Should it be any surprise?
Yes.
And to the degree that you understand them, as you say all the time, the more the world changes, the more you need to embrace and understand the things that never change and apply them to your life. The things that never change are God's nature, the natural laws governing male-female relationships. Those are every bit as much as, and you can pretend it's not there, just like you can pretend gravity's not there, but it's to your own detriment, right? That's the way I think of it. That's the way I've simplified it in my mind. So the God who created physics created the laws of relationships. And it's every much as valuable to explore those and understand those. So friendships and family, there's laws there, there's rules there. There's not a whole lot new to learn there once you dig into the author of the book, right?
Yes. Also, the secret of optimism.
Yes,
Its
back to that.
importance can't be overstressed in business. But how do you get optimism? Well, uh, one of the areas, it seems, is very, very interesting. But what is the number one correlation for people who have children? Optimism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it is that when you talk to people who've decided to have no children, they always give you an answer which has as its unwritten text, I'm a pessimist.
Yes.
I think the world is going to hell. I think the environment is being destroyed. I think that climate change is going to burn us all up. So why would I want to bring children into the world? And so, every single economic incentive in every country, from Sweden to Hungary to the United States, every attempt to improve fertility demographics by means of economic incentive fails because you are actually insulting mothers by suggesting that it's all about money. The glorious mission of motherhood, it's not about money. It's something bigger than that. And it does have something to do with a sense of cosmic optimism. Well, once again, the Bible serves as a trigger of optimism. It's extraordinary, but it just does. So this and a myriad of other reasons are why countries that are shaped by Judeo-Christian Bible thinking do well economically, and why it makes perfect sense to say, well, if it works so well for countries, why wouldn't it work for individuals or families or neighborhoods or businesses? And of course it does.
Well, can I ask you, have you been to the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C.?
Several times. I'm a huge
Okay.
fan of it. I
Incredible.
can't thank the Green family enough for making it a reality.
What an incredible high-tech experience.
Yes,
And they've done it the right way. And one,
yes, they have.
I had the honor of doing a tour there with, I don't remember the gentleman's name. It's been several years ago. He was the president of operations there and just gave us a quick whirlwind tour. But the last room we ended up in, maybe you recall this book, and I'm going to make a point that ties to what you just said. I think the listeners will enjoy this as well. I've had in my mind since seeing that room. And it was a room where they showed all the people groups that had adopted the Bible into their language and all the people groups that hadn't. Did you visit that room? And they had like
Sure.
shelves, right? And I had in my mind at that moment, thanks to your training, like I would love to see superimposed over these countries the economic strength of those nations
Yes.
based on the level of adaptation of biblical principles.
Yes.
The correlation there would have to be almost undeniable. And you could just tell at a quick glance. You're looking at the European nations, for the most part, very biblically founded and grounded. In the United States, of course, but to
Or
the
when
degree that they've
Singapore,
embraced,
when Lee Kuan Yew turned Singapore into a tiger, again, it was adaptation of these principles.
right, the
Every
other
one of them.
oriented. The other oriented is a strange thing. What's this
Yes.
altruism? Where'd that come from? How do you explain that as an evolutionist? Like, where's that come from? Giving
Yeah.
of yourself to the benefit of even strangers to
Yeah.
your own
That's
detriment? Like that. That's a spiritual thing. That's a heavy spiritual thing
yeah.
that can't be explained
Yeah.
other ways.
Yeah.
And that's what we bring to a culture. Say, hey, make others more important than self. Well, why would I do that? Because you're going to be blessed. That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. Trust me, that's how God made it. Gravity doesn't make any sense either till you've run into it a few times,
Right.
right? So those principles
Yeah.
applied to cultures. Yeah. So doesn't that sound like a cool display? Like
Yeah.
the degree that the Bible has been integrated into a culture
No,
and
it's
then their
wonderful.
financial success and stability.
It's
Map it
wonderful.
out. Someone needs to
Yeah.
do it.
And the Green family are the creators of the business called Hobby Lobby.
Right. Of course.
And so there again, there are so many happy examples of biblically sculpted families who do really well in business, and it makes all the sense in the world.
Absolutely agree. And we've benefited tremendously. And I've got multiple practical examples from our community of this applied. So let me give you an example, if you don't mind, Rabbi Lapin. I was excited to share this because one of the things that I teach, one of the business strategies we teach people how to sell online, Amazon, that sort of thing, like third-party sellers, eBay, most people are familiar with. So that business model, really, you're selling random items to strangers who you may never interact with, right? And I've heard you say many times, and this is my adaptation of a lesson I learned from you early on that really set me on fire for for being a fan of your content. It was something like this: the definition of a transaction in Hebrew, and this is again my interpretation, so correct me and help me shape it if I miss this, but it's the beginning of a mutually beneficial lifelong relationship, right? It's what it's supposed to be. You're doing business the right way if, as the transactions continue, the relationship strengthens.
Yes.
In other words, well, if you're selling random things to people all over the world, it kind of gets disconnected. Like, who is this customer of mine? Who is this person? So one of the things we train is we have a lot of homeschool families and families that do this together, and you're selling random things to strangers. Well, here's what we're going to do. These are very real people, very real families receiving these items we sell. So your job, little 5-year-old Timmy, is to put a sticker on the box. So when that person opens the box, they see a happy or draw a happy face on the box because other people are going to see and touch. So you start to mentally imagine and see the other people who are impacted by your actions. It's not just a random widget that's going to help our family make an extra $12 when it sells. This is something that's going to pass through several hands, and we have a chance to impact all those lives. And ultimately, the person who bought it is going to be better off for having received it. How do we know? Because they were willing to pay for it. So you have a chance to talk through those lessons with your kids and ingrain the other orientedness, even when you're selling random widgets to strangers, right? So we emphasize that. And the families that come back to us and say, our kids love it. They can look at a pile of toys in the corner and know that it's not theirs. We're selling those to other kids. And they can imagine those kids in their mind, and they can imagine the benefits those families will receive from those toys. A birthday party, someone's worked hard and saved, and they finally get to buy this toy. We can build those scenarios to help them connect, even though you may not actually ever meet that person. Right. That's one of the ways I've applied some of the lessons in a very tangible way to even selling random widgets to strangers.
Jim, as you began to build your organization, and you're hundreds and hundreds of people strong at the moment, Do you have many instances or only a few of people who had previous occupations which they abandoned and turned away from in order to begin new careers in internet marketing?
You have, I'm going to answer with a resource. Okay. It is the Gathering Storm, right? The Noah's Ark, right? We live inarguably, from my perspective, although we're getting a bit of a reprieve with some recent election results,
Yes, yes,
we live in
indeed.
a time of cultural and moral decline, undeniable. So, a good rabbi friend of mine taught me in that curriculum that when you find yourself in a time of cultural and moral decline and as a culture, what do you do? How do you conduct your affairs? What changes do you make? One of the changes that's suggested in in the good book, based on the story of Noah's Ark, right? The Gathering Storm. That's the right name of that curriculum, isn't
Yes,
it?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, good. Uh, is you get your family close and you build something together. And so one of the things that we do, and not everyone on my leadership team is on board with this as I am. A good number of us are, however, that one of the things I think we've been doing is saving marriages, saving families, getting them under the same roof. Now, maybe dad still goes off to his corporate career, but then this is a side thing. Maybe they both have to work, and this is something they're trying to build their dreams on. But we have seen a good number of people leave medical careers, professional college professors, and all kinds of other careers to say, you know what? I want to be home. I want a flexible schedule. I want to build my own business. I want to do something that I can bring my kids into. And you've been to our events. I mean, you see little kids with 10-year-olds with business cards. Like, what's
Yes.
that about? Right? Homeschool families. So we're catering to that and
Your
encouraging that.
events, by the way, are about the only time where I got my comeuppance. Where when I'm usually at events, and people often have their children there, and I'm not just talking about business events. I mean, even in community events,
Sure.
I hope it's not more obnoxious than absolutely necessary. But I always say to these kids, whether the kid's 7 years old or 11 or 12, whatever, I always say to them, and what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And they, usually look back at me with puzzlement. And I said, well, don't you go to work? Don't you have any work? And invariably, um, and I aroused the ire of some family members a little while ago because the children said, "No, we go to school." And I said, "What a dreadful waste of time! Who forces you to do that?" And the parental response was questionable. But the funny thing is, at your events, I stopped doing that because every kid had a really good answer of what they were doing.
They've got business cards
Yes,
and services they provided. It blows me away as well. But we were built. We were built for this. What was the book? I'm going to try to remember the title, and maybe you can help me with the author. Weapons of Mass Instruction.
uh,
Gatto. Gatto?
oh, yeah.
John Taylor.
What's his John Taylor Gatto? Yes,
That's it.
wonderful.
One of the things he talks about in there, just tying back to what you just said, they actually started, after the child labor laws came into play, they went and they surveyed the boys and like, okay, if you could have it either way, get back to work, make some money, help build a future for your family and for your future family, or sit behind a desk and watch someone draw on a chalkboard and then take a test basically. Overwhelmingly, at any age, especially the boys, can I please go back to work? Can I please go build a business? Can I please get back out into, right? And I'm not making, I'm not looking to send us down a rabbit hole here, but the greatest pleasure I derive in life is being able to provide and protect for my family, and then to
Yes,
be able to stretch that circle out one more and help other families do the same thing. I mean, it's incredibly rewarding. And I learned the Hebrew principle from you, the different levels of giving,
yes,
right?
that's
And I
right.
won't tell all 8 of them, but the highest form of giving is giving in such a way that you make someone self-sufficient and a giver themselves. I mean, it's one thing to toss a few coins to a guy on the street so he can buy a sandwich so he'll leave you alone. I mean, that's the lowest level of giving. And then you get up to the highest level. It's doing the stuff that you do, Rabbi
Yes,
Lapin. It's doing the stuff that I helping you become self-sufficient so you become a giver yourself. I want to give people that. It's bigger than just teaching a man to fish. It's the way you think. It's the way you see the world. It's the abundance mindset that
Yes.
leads to gratitude, that leads to optimism, right?
Right.
What a gift. And we get to do that.
So what are we, you know, what are we saying to people in terms of coaching? That you can also you can move into this area of activity, financially and emotionally fulfilling area.
Well, what I think we're looking for is people will know it. This is either going to resonate with you or it's not. If you think we're a couple crazy dudes talking about craziness right now, this probably isn't for you. Keep listening though, because you'll come around eventually. Truth has a way of floating eventually. Right? We're seeing a lot of that in our culture right now, where the LA wildfires are great. It's one thing to say, well, deforestation is mean to the animals. Well, just
Yeah,
wait till there's a fire. Then we all know deforestation might have been a better idea.
yeah,
Reality tends to float. Truth tends to float eventually. So
right.
keep listening. But the people that this is for are going to say, I can imagine a life where, along with whatever else I'm doing, I'm coaching and training a handful of the people on these principles, and I'm helping them in the 5F areas: faith, family, friendship, fitness, finance. I'm helping them under the close watchful eye of Susan and Rabbi Lapin, and they're going to be there with me as a resource. But I want to launch a business doing this. Some people call it life coaching. The holistic coaching that you guys are offering and that we're going to help shape out. And then based on the experiences that I've had, I've been doing e-commerce coaching for over 20 years. We've coached nearly 10,000 people, Rabbi Lapin. We've been doing it longer than anyone that I know of. So the structure of what it looks like to build a coaching organization, man, we've been doing that a while. I can do that in my sleep now, building a team if necessary. So we start to connect these dots. And so the idea is, again, to bring some clarity to this concept, wehappywarriors.com/5F coaching. There'll be a link, I'm sure, in your notes. Uh, is let's just talk to some people about these concepts. Let's filter through. We've got a little survey that people can fill out. It's already on that page if you want to get ahead of the curve and fill it out. Find a handful. We've said a handful, 5, 10, maybe a few more, a reasonable amount that you can work with. I'll be working with them. Let's help them build a coaching business based on these principles. Let's see who this resonates with.
Yeah.
We're looking for a handful of people. Because again, one thing that you said to me, and I'm going to, you can edit this out if you want to, but you've been transparent with me on a handful of occasions at events, and we've had some very, very good conversations. And you said, Jim, one of the things I think we've missed in building the organization the way we have over the years is I don't have that core group that is like mini me's almost, of like taking the ball and running with it further than I can. And I've done that and very intentionally kind of almost stepped back out of the spotlight and let them run the show. And I'm just there to learn and help shape and
Mm.
make sure we stay within the guiding principles. So I love to see you stepping into that. And as a consumer of your content and a fan of what you guys have done, I want to be one of those people. So when you tapped me to say, hey, how about you help us lead this effort? I said, sign me up. Let's go. Because the quality of those people, those individuals that make it through this process, there's going to be some incredible people to hang out with and to learn from and to mastermind and network with. And so that's my vision for this. I think that's shared with you and Susan, but I'd love
Yeah.
to hear from you. Like what's your vision for this group? And as you've had time to talk it over with Susan, and uh, where would you like to see it go? And I want it to be a blessing for you as well.
I think to first of all to help people overcome the sometimes seemingly insurmountable mental obstacle of, you know, I can't believe anybody is actually going to pay me for coaching.
Yeah.
And, we all get taught humility, and there is also a healthy dose of self doubt. And when you couple them together, you can very often get this obstacle that says, I mean, I can see why this might be good for some people, but there's no way it can work for me. Um, so helping bust through that um, is something I'm passionate about. It's obviously not easy, and you've been doing that though. You've been doing that with people for decades already, haven't you?
Well, based on no small part on the training and the things that I've learned from you. You know, if one of the Hebrew principles that I can almost, like, you imagine someone standing up and saying, okay, it finally makes sense, right? Like, I've done that so many times. I feel like I'm interrupting the crowd. Like, oh, I needed the Hebrew concept of your last name reflecting your occupation.
Yes, that's right.
Marketing is built right in. When people
Yes,
says, who are you? It's in my name. This is who I'm Wasserman. I'm Silverstein. This is this is what I do. It's a Hebrew biblical principle. So you begin to take on an identity. See, perhaps the biggest favor that you've done, when it's all said and done, and we're like, okay, what did he truly accomplish? Is he pushed back against Rabbi Lapin, you've done this. You've pushed back against this narrative that says business is somehow lacking in virtue.
that's
I
right.
listened to a podcast episode just today. They mentioned your name, actually, and maybe we can talk offline about who it was. I don't want to call anyone out. It's names that everyone would recognize. It's a popular podcast. And they brought your name up as a counterpoint because they were kind of going back and forth on this. Is, can business be done ethically? What's it mean to have a business with a purpose instead of just a business seeking profit? And I wanted to just scream and shake my screen. Like, guys, listen. If you're doing transactions in such a way that it's building a mutually beneficial relationship, be proud of that.
Yes,
There's no other cause or purpose bigger than providing a valuable service that enhances
right.
the relationship, right? So if you've got something you're that proud of and you want to share it with others, be bold, be proud. There's nothing more virtuous. I think it's a Samuel Johnson quote you introduced me to, and this is me paraphrasing it, but it basically says something like, seldom is a man more virtuously engaged than in the pursuit of profit
Yeah.
of his own business. Until you can come to terms with that, you're going to struggle with
Yes.
business.
Yes.
But once you do, be proud, put your name on it, you've got a lot of value to share against this culture that's telling us profit is bad and businesses have to give back before they can be virtuous. And there's all these negative, toxic
Yes. Oh, yes.
messages. You got to step out of that cloud. So that's what I say. That's one of the most valuable things you've done. And that's the mindset. If you want to start getting clients, you've got to get yourself there. How's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I'm passionate about this stuff.
No, I am too, and I think we'll find that that a lot of people are.
I know that the happy warriors in your community are some
Yeah.
incredible people. I've had a chance to get to
Yes.
know
There's a
several of them.
high level of passion. No
Yes,
question about it.
because
Yes.
you feel like you've got the solution that people are looking for, and that'll fire you up for sure. Wow.
Yeah. 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 Um, Jim, I'm interested in your comment earlier. You said that recent events, alluding, of course, to the November 2024 election, that the slide down the slippery slope to ultimately decadence and oblivion seems to have been, if not halted, certainly slowed. Um,
Reprieve, perhaps.
a reprieve, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh,
Are you feeling that strongly?
well, you know what? This is you don't toot your own horn enough, my friend. You were the first person that I heard in any kind of public setting back in, was it 2015? And you've mentioned it a couple times, but you are by far the earliest to say, this Trump guy that everyone's making fun of. And you don't have to. I mean, you can. The videotape's out there.
Yeah. No,
Everybody was like,
that is true. I did.
"Who's this
Yeah.
clown?" And you said at the time, uh, "This is the guy that can punch back."
Yeah. That's right.
It's sad that our culture is at a place where we need someone to punch back to win the presidency, but that's where we are,
Yes.
because the progressive agenda is punching hard. And you can't go in and be Mr. Nice Guy and Mr. Soft. I would never win. I'm too subtle. I'm too, I don't want to offend. Trump will punch back. And
Yeah.
you called it. You said this guy is had a good chance. I think he's going to probably win this thing well before anyone else. And the only other person that I had in my life that was saying those kind of things was my wife. And I thought you both were a little crazy, but interesting theory, guys.
Yeah.
What about this Jeb Bush guy? What about, I think these guys got a better shot. No. And
No.
so here we are in the second term. I had the good fortune a few weeks ago, and I
Oh,
know
you went to Mar-a-Lago.
you had the invitation as well, but weren't able to make it. But yeah, I
Yes.
didn't get to meet Trump, you know. So,
Ah,
but we were there, and it was a gathering of Orthodox Jewish, and there were rabbis there. There, what's the Senate called in Israel? Knesset? What's it
the
called?
which?
Knesset? How do you pronounce that? Like the Jewish um,
Oh, the parliament in
the
Israel,
parliament.
Knesset.
Knesset, thank you.
Yes.
So several members of they were there as well, along with a bunch of us crazy evangelical Christians. It was just amazing time of prayer for Israel and thanking God that we had a very pro-Israel president in place. And I'm all about that. I've taught classes at our church, you know, what Christians should feel, how they should believe and think about Israel and see it through a scriptural lens. And um, so, yeah, I believe we are in a time of reprieve. Uh, I believe it's God's favor and blessing that we're in a time, you know, and it's not so much for me about Trump. As a man, I'm not that impressed all the time. Just be honest. But and this is another Rabbi Lapin wisdom moment. And when I talk about the man, this is what I always say: which neighbor would you rather have?
Yeah, that's
Would
right.
you rather have the neighbor that when you're not looking kicks the dog and, you know, it says mean things, but he does the right thing ultimately in the end? Like if your house has a problem, he's going to fix it while you're on vacation. So the guy is grumpy, he's mean, he's kind of nasty, says things that aren't appropriate, but in the end, he does the right thing.
Yeah,
Or the person who just schmoozes and says all the nice, right things and brings you cookies, but's talking the whole neighborhood about how horrible of a person you are and ultimately does the wrong thing given the
right.
opportunity to help you. I want the guy that helps me. I want the guy that votes pro life. I want the guy that ultimately appoints good, responsible people.
Yeah, right.
Trump himself, how I feel about him is almost irrelevant. What are the results? What are the things that he's
Yeah,
doing? Right.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, that's my take on it. And I've heard you address it in different settings. And I get myself in trouble a little bit every time. And there's people on my team who feel differently than I do. And that, you know, that's the world we live in. But yeah, I feel like we're
So here we are at
in a
the
good
beginning of
place.
2025,
Yeah.
and you and I are going to be working with a number of people over the next few months who
Hmm.
are going to be starting new business enterprises. How do you feel about starting a new business now under a Trump administration, or what starting a new business might have been like had it now been under a Harris
A Kamala,
administration?
right. There, it's a night and day different. You talked about the optimism, the hope for the future, right? There's people throwing around, you know, the golden age of America. We're hearing talk of the end of income tax. Like that is such an incredible, as a business owner, the opportunity for me to deploy more of my resources without throwing them into this machine that basically burns them in the wind, right? Which there's very limited, and I'm a limited small government guy, so don't get me started. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but there's very few constitutional purposes of the federal government. It's gotten so blown up and it's taken such a huge piece of every pie that I make. It's hard. We start to pull back and give me more of those resources and let me make the decisions about how I can grow and expand, serve more people, hire more people, grow my business without taxation being the biggest check I have to write every month. Look out. So yeah, the business environment, um, I say all the time, I said it today on a separate podcast before this one. If you had to pick a time to be alive in all of human history, where the goal was you wanted to land in that time and build a successful, profitable business, minimum risks and maximum odds of a positive outcome, where would you want to be?
Now's a pretty good time.
Right now, I would argue is probably the best. There's been a few really other good ones, but
Yeah,
man, with the technology we have now,
right,
resources,
right.
and the elimination of risk from the process,
Yeah,
this endeavor that you and I are taking right now to launch this coaching program, what's our total capital we've put at risk? A few conversations,
yeah,
right? And this could turn into something amazing,
yes,
beautiful. And if it doesn't, we've helped a few friends
yeah,
go further, faster on a great path, right? So
right,
those kind of opportunities are there because of technology. So yeah, I love the environment, business environment. I think we're going to see a beautiful 4 years of
yeah,
economic prosperity and success in business. Yeah, that's
great.
my. How do you feel? To bounce the question back to you, would you echo those sentiments?
Exactly the same. I think, we never know what things will look like in 4 years' time or 8 years' time,
Of course
but
not.
right now there's no reason to tarry, no reason to procrastinate. Now is definitely the time to start an enterprise.
I would completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a mood, there's an air
Yeah.
that's very conducive. It reminds me a lot of when Reagan came. The federal taxes got slashed,
Yes.
tax rates lowered, and the economy exploded.
Right.
The government actually took in more money than it ever had with
Yeah.
lower tax rates than we'd had in decades.
Of
How's
course.
that work? Well, the
Yeah. Well,
economy
that's a curve.
exploded.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Jim, there's always so much more to talk about than there is time, but fortunately, you and I will have that opportunity soon, and we will continue the discussion. But for today, as far as our audience is concerned, this is about as far as we go before we bring it in for a landing. So thank you so much for your friendship, and thank you for your enterprise and innovation and ideas on this particular project we're working on.
You've contributed so much to the success of the business here, and so much to the philosophy that we have as an organization has been pulled from the content that you've created. So thank you 100 times more right back. And it's an honor and truly a privilege to be serving you in the community that you've built. I'm here as a resource for any of them, and is just excited to be on this journey. Maybe we should mention the link one more time for those who want to go.
Yeah, that's right. wehappywarriors.com/5F, like Freddie, 5F coaching. And you'll see quite a lot of information right there.
Looking forward to seeing who gathers. God bless you, my friend.
Jim, we'll talk again soon. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I always find value in talking to Jim, and as I said, I always like speaking for his events because I meet so many people from many different walks of life, including people who've done all kinds of other things, who have said to themselves, you know what, I want to be in business. I want to become a business professional. And something that I have spoken with a number of people about recently is that when you're making that jump into business, being committed to excel makes all the difference in the world. And it's a crucial aspect of the coaching world. In other words, when a client works with me, and I don't work with many clients at a time, but when a client works with me, very often the task is to help the person, help the client achieve excellence, to really go beyond the mundane. And this really means a major change. And it means realizing that the effort to move from just okay, from good, to really great, it's not huge. The effort doesn't match the result. The result is really tremendous. What I mean by that, a good college athlete can do 100 meters in about 11 seconds. It's pretty good time for the 100-meter race. But I so much enjoy, to this day, I watch the YouTube video of the Jamaican runner Usain Bolt winning the London Olympics in 2012, the 100-meter dash. And he does it in 9.5 seconds, and it's something to watch. You say to yourself, really a big difference between 9.5 seconds and 11 seconds? Well, the difference is that if you do it at 11 seconds, you stay in small Townsville in the running area for always. If you do it in 9.5 seconds, you win the London Olympics. 1.5 seconds is all the difference between good and fantastic, good and great. Think of the United States Postal Service. They get about 97% of their letters and packages to their destination, which is good. I mean, 97%, millions of packages, 97% is definitely good, but it's not great. Great is FedEx. FedEx gets 99.6% of their packages to their destinations on time. That's a difference. USPS, so you do 97%, that's good. Essentially, you are the metaphor for mediocrity in the United States of America. The post office constantly raising the price of a first-class stamp and doing a worse job on delivering it. FedEx is a fantastic company, and you can see the pride of people who work for FedEx compared with the people mostly who work for the U.S. Postal Service. The difference, again, is there a big difference between 97% and 99.6%? Yeah, it's a few percentage points, but the result is huge. A good bricklayer, I'm fascinated with bricklayers. A good bricklayer can do 600 bricks a day, on a fairly straightforward, say a straightforward wall without doors and windows and so on. But a great bricklayer does about 900 bricks a day. And again, you say, okay, fine. Is it? Yeah, the difference is that a typical 4-bedroom, 2,000 square foot little house, the good bricklayer takes 13 weeks to do it, right? 3 months, more than 3 months. The great bricklayer does it in 8 weeks. It's a big difference. And so, being in business, there are so many things that it's important to understand, and one of them is that you can just push a little harder, but the results you get are massively enhanced. So thank you for being part of the show. I appreciate it, and want to wish you a wonderful week of progress with your 5 F's: your family, your finance, your faith, your fitness, and your friendship. I'm Rabbi Daniel Lapin. God bless.